So if you just, look around the room you're in right now, just pick an object.
Any object at all.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe it's the phone in your hand,
Yeah.
or maybe it's just a coffee mug on your desk, or, even just the chair you're currently sitting on.
Right.
Just take a really good look at it. Notice the edges of it, the weight, the color, because our brains are completely hardwired by, millions of years of evolution to tell us a very specific story about that object.
A very convincing story.
It's super convincing. And that story is that it is a solid, independent thing, that it exists entirely on its own, completely separate from you, separate from, the air around it, just sitting there being itself.
Yeah, possessing its own inherent nature.
Right. But what if I told you that, according to the strict laws of logic, that object literally does not exist?
It's a wild thought.
It really is. But to make things infinitely more complicated, it also isn't non-existent.
Right, which sounds like a total contradiction.
Exactly. In fact, the very boundary between you and that object, the actual line where you end and the mug begins, is just a complete hallucination. Welcome to another deep dive, by the way.
Yeah, glad to be here for this one. It is deeply unnerving when you first start to really look at the mechanics of reality like this.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
Because we navigate our entire lives operating on the assumption of, solid boundaries and independent essences.
We have to. Practically speaking, just to get through the day, you need to know where the door is so you can walk through it.
Right. You don't want to walk into the wall. But when you apply really rigorous analytical pressure to those assumptions, the solidity just, it simply vanishes.
It evaporates.
And that is exactly what we are going to do today. We are taking a proverbial sledgehammer to the very foundation of how we perceive reality.
Which is exciting and a little terrifying.
Yeah, a bit of both. Now, since you, our listener, already joined us for the previous chapters, you know that in our last deep dive, we spent a massive amount of time dismantling the ideas of combination and unification.
All right, chapter 14. We figured out that things don't inherently combine to make new, solid things.
Which was huge, but that realization naturally begs the question, right? If things don't combine, what are these things in the first place?
Exactly. What is the fundamental building block?
So today we are going right to the root of the illusion. We are looking at the concept of a self-existent thing.
Yes. And the Sanskrit term for this, which we'll use a bit, is Svabhava.
Svabhava.
Yeah, it roughly translates to own nature or inherent existence or just essence.
Essence. Okay, I like that.
And our mission today is to put this concept of essence through the absolute ringer. Specifically, we're going to use an 11-step analytical framework laid out in the 15th chapter of Nāgārjuna's Mūlamadhyamakakārikā.
Which is appropriately titled, An Analysis of a Self-Existent Thing.
Right on the nose.
I mean, I'm looking at my coffee mug right now, and I can literally feel my brain fighting this whole premise. My brain is just screaming, it's a mug, it's made of ceramic, I put coffee in it, it's right there.
That's the conventional mind doing its job.
So to break this down, we really need to isolate what we are actually analyzing, right? Because when my brain looks at this mug, it's not actually just seeing one isolated thing.
No. Yeah.
It's like silently constructing a three-part relationship, isn't it?
That is the perfect place to start. Step 1 of our 11-step journey. We are dealing with a triad. It's a relational framework.
Okay, lay out the triad for me.
The first part of that triad is the Svabhava, the supposed inherent essence of the mug. It's the belief that the mugness of the mug exists independently right from its own side without relying on anything else whatsoever.
So like the ultimate irreducible core of the object.
Right. Now, the second part of the triad is the conceptual opposition, or the relation.
The boundary.
Exactly, the boundary line. It's that mental and physical space that separates the mug from, well, everything else in the universe.
The edge of the ceramic, which leaves the third part of the triad, everything else.
Which Nāgārjuna calls parabhāva. Parabhāva means other nature or dependent nature.
So parabhāva is the other.
Yeah. Think about it. If the mug has a self-existent nature, then the table it sits on, the air around it, the hand that holds it, all of that falls into the category of other existence.
Because they are defined by simply not being the mug.
Exactly. So our triad, just to summarize step 1, is the self-existent thing, the boundary, and the other existent thing. Svabhava, opposition, parabhāva.
It seems like a perfectly reasonable way to map the world, honestly. Self, boundary, other, I mean, that's how I live my life.
It's incredibly pragmatic. Yeah. But for step 2, Nāgārjuna brings in a tool that essentially acts like a a logical meat grinder for these kinds of assumptions.
A tetralemma.
The tetralemma, the four-cornered logic.
Okay, before we apply this to the fabric of reality, I want to make sure I actually understand how this tool works mechanically.
Sure.
Because in Western logic, we usually only deal with two corners, right? True or false. Like, is the mug on the desk or is it not on the desk? It's binary.
Right. Western logic relies heavily on the law of the excluded middle. It has to be A or not A. There's no in-between.
But ancient Indian logic, and particularly Madhyamaka philosophy, uses four corners.
Yes, to exhaust every single conceptual possibility. Let's test it out on a mundane concept, just to see the friction it creates.
Okay, let's do it.
Take the concept of a tall person. We can run it through the four corners. First corner. Is a person inherently, absolutely tall from their own side?
Well, no. I mean, if a guy is 6 feet tall, he is tall next to a kindergartner, but he is short next to an MBA center. So he isn't inherently tall all by himself.
Right. Second corner. Is he inherently not tall? Meaning, is he absolutely short?
Again, no, because next to that kindergartner, he is definitely tall.
Okay, third corner. Is he both inherently tall and inherently not tall?
That's just a logical contradiction. You can't possess two mutually exclusive absolute essences at the exact same time in the same context.
Exactly. Fourth corner. Is he neither tall nor not tall? Does he exist in some fifth, undefined dimension, completely outside of height altogether?
No, he clearly has a physical dimension. I can measure him with a tape measure.
So all four corners fail to capture an absolute essence of tallness. The concept of tallness completely collapses under the tetralemma because it is entirely relative. It's dependent.
Okay, I see how that works. It's a trap for absolutes.
It really is. Now, take that exact same logical mechanism, that four-cornered negation, and apply it to our triad, the self-existent essence, the boundary, and the other existent essence.
Which brings us to the verses of chapter 15.
Right. Nāgārjuna asserts that none of these three spheres can be logically established as existent, non-existent, both, or neither.
So let's look at verses 1 and 2, which tackle that first corner. Let's put the self-existent essence, the Svabhāva, into corner 1. Does the inherent essence of a thing actually exist?
Well, to have an inherent essence means the thing must be entirely independent. It must not rely on anything else to be what it is. It has to be unproduced.
And this is where Nāgārjuna introduces the concept of causality in production, right?
Exactly. Look at the mug in your desk. How did it get there?
Well, it was manufactured. Someone dug clay out of the earth, a machine molded it, it was fired in a really hot kiln, glazed with chemicals, put on a truck, shipped to a store, and I bought it.
So the mug is entirely dependent on a massive, infinitely regressing web of causes and conditions.
Yeah, thousands of things had to happen for this mug to be here.
Which means it was produced. And because it was produced, it is contingent.
Okay, I'm tracking.
And Nāgārjuna's logic is ironclad here. If something is contingent, if it relies on a network of external factors to exist, it cannot possibly possess Svabhāva.
Because an independent essence, by definition, cannot depend on anything.
Right. If it depends, it isn't independent. Therefore, anything that is produced by causes and conditions cannot have a self-existent nature. Verse 1 and 2 explicitly point this out. An unproduced essence is a contradiction in terms if we're looking at the conditioned world.
Wait, I need to throw a massive wrench into this.
Go for it.
I understand the mug is a composite object. It's super easy to see how a mug is just a temporary arrangement of clay, heat, and human labor. But what if we zoom way past the macro world? What if we look at fundamental physics?
Okay, getting into the quantum realm.
Yeah, think about a foundational particle, like an electron or a quark. An electron isn't built in a factory. It isn't made of smaller parts that were glued together in a kiln.
Sure.
It is considered a fundamental building block of the physical universe. Doesn't an electron have absolute Svabhāva? I mean, a hydrogen atom acts like a hydrogen atom no matter where it is in the vastness of the cosmos. Doesn't that scientifically prove it has an inherent unproduced nature?
It's a brilliant challenge, and honestly, it's exactly where 19th century classical physics thought we would end up. They thought we were going to find the ultimate, solid, irreducible billiard balls of reality.
The absolute bottom of the barrel.
Right. But modern quantum mechanics actually validates Nāgārjuna in a way that is almost terrifying. Let's look at your electron.
Okay.
In quantum field theory, an electron is not a tiny, solid sphere. It's not a billiard ball. It is an excitation in a quantum field.
Meaning it's more like a wave in an ocean than a marble?
Exactly. And more importantly, and this is where it really blows the mind, an electron does not possess fixed inherent properties in isolation. Its properties, like its mass, its spin, its charge, they only become definite when it interacts with another system.
Wait, really? Only when it interacts?
Yeah, when it is measured or observed. This is the core of quantum entanglement and the observer effect.
Oh, wow.
If an electron were placed in a hypothetical universe with absolutely nothing else in it, no other fields, no particles, no space-time to interact with, it wouldn't just be lonely. Its properties would be mathematically undefined.
It wouldn't even be an electron as we know it.
Right. It has no nature that exists independently of its environment.
Let me make sure I'm fully tracking the gravity of this. You are saying that even at the very bottom of the physical universe, at the level of quarks and electrons, there is no solid pit.
No solid pit.
The fundamental particles only get their identity through relationship, through interacting with other fields.
Yes. Because think about it. If an electron had absolute Svabhāva, an unchanging independent essence, it would be frozen.
Right. It couldn't change?
It could never interact with a photon. It could never bind to a proton to make hydrogen. It could never participate in the chemistry of your brain.
It would just be stuck being itself forever.
Precisely. For a universe to have time, change, and causality, it must be entirely devoid of inherent essence. Causality and Svabhāva are mutually exclusive. If things change, they lack essence. If things have essence, they cannot change.
Man, so the first corner of the tetralemma completely collapses. The self-existent thing cannot exist, not in the macro world of coffee mugs, and not in the micro world of quantum fields. It is a logical and physical impossibility.
Which brings us to verse 3, and it triggers an immediate catastrophic structural collapse for the rest of the triad.
Like a house of cards.
Exactly. If you pull out the foundation of Svabhava, what happens to parabhāva, the other existence?
It just evaporates instantly.
Because it's entirely relative.
Right. Think about how we defined other existence earlier. It is entirely relative. The environment is only defined as not the mug. The hand is only not the mug. But if the mug has no independent, solid core, if it is just a fluid, interacting web of conditions, then where exactly does the mug end and the environment begin?
You literally can't draw the boundary line.
It's like trying to find the exact molecular border between the ocean and a wave. The wave is just the ocean moving in a specific pattern. You can point to the wave conventionally, but you can't isolate its essence from the ocean.
That's a beautiful way to put it. If there is no independent self for the mug, there is absolutely no foundational reference point to establish otherness.
Parabhāva is just a conceptual shadow.
And you cannot have a shadow without an inherently real object casting it. The dependent nature lacks a foundation to depend upon to establish its otherness. So verse 3 essentially says, without self-nature, there can be no other nature.
And this brings down the entire first triad. There is no self-existence, there is no boundary or conceptual opposition, and there is no other existence. They are mental maps, not features of the actual terrain.
Exactly. Which naturally leads us to verses 4 and 5, and the second major triad Nāgārjuna targets.
Right, because if my brain can't have a self-existent thing, it naturally tries to run to another extreme. It wants to say, fine, things don't exist independently, so we must just be talking about mere existence versus non-existence.
The triad of existence, opposition, and non-existence. Pava and abhava.
Bhava and apava. But Nāgārjuna systematically cuts off those escape routes, too.
He's relentless. Let's look at pava, existence. Verse 4 points out that if a thing doesn't exist independently by its own power, and it doesn't exist as a dependent other relative to an independent thing, in what possible way could you claim it inherently exists at all?
You can't. If the building blocks of reality, self, and other are empty of essence, you can't just stack them together to create existence.
Right. It's like trying to build a solid house out of imaginary bricks.
So we move to the opposite extreme. If you conclude that things don't exist, the mind immediately swings to nihilism. Okay, so everything is just non-existent. There's only a void, abhava.
But Nāgārjuna blocks this in verse 5. And the logic here is incredibly tight. Non-existence isn't a thing in itself. It is entirely reliant on the premise of an existent thing.
This part is so fascinating. Can we use the thermodynamics analogy here?
Yes, consider the concept of cold from a scientific perspective.
Right, cold isn't an actual energy force. You cannot measure a unit of cold. In physics, cold is strictly and exclusively the absence of thermal energy. It's just the absence of heat.
Precisely. If the universe had absolutely no concept or reality of heat, The concept of cold would be literally meaningless. It wouldn't exist.
Nāgārjuna applies that exact same thermodynamic logic to ontology, doesn't he?
He does. We only use the term non-existence to describe the cessation or the absence of an entity we previously assumed to exist.
You only say the mug is gone because you first assumed there was an inherently existent mug there to begin with.
Yes. But if we just proved through the tetralemma that the inherently existent mug never actually existed in the first place, that it was always just a fluid, interdependent process.
Then you cannot claim the non-existence of the mug either.
Because there was no solid thing there to vanish.
It makes total sense. You can't note the absence of an illusion. If I hallucinate a ghost in my living room and then I blink and the ghost is gone, I don't say, the ghost has entered a state of non-existence. I say, my premise was flawed. The ghost was never there.
Exactly. So non-existence is just as empty, just as conceptually flawed as existence is. They require each other to make sense, but both lack any ultimate foundation.
And here is where this heavy, abstract logic suddenly becomes profoundly psychological.
It really does. Verses 6 through 11 dive right into this.
By dismantling existence and non-existence, Nāgārjuna is actually offering us an escape route from the two most devastating psychological and philosophical traps of the human condition.
Eternalism and annihilationism.
I really want to ground these two terms for the listener because they sound like, dry academic categories, but they are actually the root of almost all human suffering.
They are the source of so much anxiety. Let's start with eternalism.
Okay.
Eternalism is the deep-seated belief that things have a permanent, unchanging essence. It is the clinging to Svabhava, and we do this constantly, not just with coffee mugs, but with our identities, our relationships, our youth, our careers.
We believe that who we are at 25 is a solid, enduring essence.
And when you believe that, when you reify a temporary state into an eternal essence, you're setting yourself up for catastrophic suffering.
Because the observable reality of the universe is impermanence.
Everything is constantly changing. Cells die, relationships evolve, careers pivot, bodies age. If your mental model requires things to have an eternal essence, and reality is constantly dismantling that essence, you will spend your entire life in a state of terrified resistance.
You literally fight time itself.
And verse 8 points out the logical absurdity of eternalism. If a thing existed by way of its intrinsic nature, it could never cease to be. It would be immune to the flow of time, but clearly, things end. So eternalism is just factually incorrect.
But the pendulum swing to the other side is just as dangerous, if not more so. Annihilationism.
The trap of nihilism.
This is the trap you fall into when eternalism breaks your heart. You realize things don't last, so you swing to the opposite extreme and believe that things exist, and then they completely, utterly vanish into a dark, meaningless void.
Annihilationism is the bedrock of nihilistic depression. It is the belief that death, or the end of a relationship, or the loss of a job, is a hard boundary into absolute nothingness.
But verse 11 warns that relying on cessation, treating non-existence as a final absolute state, is just a mirrored reflection of the exact same error.
Because to believe in annihilation, you still have to believe there was a solid, independent something that got deleted. You are still clinging to the ghost of essence.
You can't have annihilation without an essence to annihilate.
Precisely. And there is a famous moment in Buddhist history that perfectly encapsulates this trap, which Nāgārjuna actually references in verse 7.
Oh, the Katyayana Sutra.
Yes, it's recorded in the Katyayana Sutra. A monk named Katyayana approaches the Buddha and asks him a very straightforward question. Is there right view? What is the true nature of reality?
And he expects a binary yes or no answer. Does the world exist or does it not exist?
Right. And the Buddha completely refuses the binary. He tells Katyayana that the world generally relies on a polarity, a dualism of existence and non-existence. The mind is constantly bouncing between it is and it is not.
But the Buddha says that when you observe the arising of the world with clear wisdom, the concept of non-existence doesn't make sense because you see things happening, interacting, flowing.
But crucially, when you observe the ceasing of the world, the fading of phenomena, the concept of existence also doesn't make sense because you see that nothing holds its shape permanently.
The Buddha rejects both extremes. He outright refuses to land on the A or the not A.
Which is the core of the middle way.
Okay, so that essentially wraps up the first two steps of our 11-step framework. We've watched the entire framework of how we map reality, self, other, existence, non-existence collapse under the weight of logical scrutiny.
Every extreme position we took failed. The tetralemma leaves no survivors.
So step 3, what is the conclusion? If these spheres aren't real, what are we left with?
We arrive at the undeniable conclusion of emptiness,
Sunyata.
sunyata. Because all four corners lead to contradiction, we must conclude that these three spheres, Svabhava, the conceptual boundary, and parabhāva, are entirely empty of inherent existence. They are never absolute.
There is no real solid opposition or relation between opposites because there are no inherently real opposites to begin with.
Exactly.
I think the word emptiness has done a lot of PR damage to this philosophy in the West.
Oh, without a doubt.
Because in English, empty sounds like a vacuum. It sounds like a black hole. It sounds like a depressing void where absolutely nothing matters.
Which is the annihilationist trap we just avoided.
Right. Emptiness does not mean the mug isn't there. It doesn't mean your life isn't happening.
It means it is empty of essence. It is empty of independence.
And that distinction leads us directly to step 4, the functional counterpart of emptiness, which is dependent co-origination.
Yes, these two concepts, emptiness and dependent origination, are two sides of the exact same coins. You can't have one without the other.
Because these spheres lack a rigid, independent core, it means they are completely, entirely interdependent. They are dependently co-originated.
Svabhava, parabhāva, and the boundary between them co-define each other. They co-emerge. They co-evolve.
Think about the classic Abhidharma philosophical debates in ancient India.
Right, the realist schools.
They were obsessed with finding the dividing lines between phenomena. They would use the analogy of the seed and the sprout, or the clay and the pot. They would argue endlessly. At what exact nanosecond does the seed cease to be a seed and become a sprout? Where is the objective boundary?
And Nāgārjuna's answer is that there is no objective boundary.
Let's modernize that analogy to make it hit home for the listener.
Sure. Think about a digital photograph on your computer screen, like a high-resolution JPEG of a human face. When you look at it from a normal distance, you see a face. You see the boundary of the cheek, the edge of the eye.
You recognize it immediately.
But if you zoom in close enough, eventually the face disappears, and you are just looking at a grid of colored pixels.
So where did the face go?
It was never inherently there. The face is co-imputed by your mind. You took a vast, interdependent network of pixels, and your brain drew a boundary around a certain cluster of them and designated it face.
Right. The boundary doesn't exist on the screen. It exists in your conceptual mapping.
The pixels are dependently co-originated to create the image, and your mind dependently co-originates the concept of the face to understand it.
That is a perfect example of step 4. The face is a mere designation. It is a name. It is a conventional tool that helps us navigate the visual data.
Which perfectly transitions us to step 5. Perhaps the most critical, delicate nuance in all of Madhyamaka thought. The union of the two truths. Yes. This is where we avoid the trap of saying, well, if it's all just pixels and designations, then none of it matters. I'll just walk out into traffic because cars are just empty concepts.
Please don't do that.
Nāgārjuna is incredibly careful not to deny conventional reality. He introduces a dual lens system for perceiving the world.
Okay, let's break down the two lenses.
The first truth is the conventional truth. This is the realm of dependent origination. It is the appearance and the utility of our concepts.
So, in the conventional truth, the ceramic mug holds hot coffee. The digital pixels form a recognizable face.
And if you step in front of a moving bus, the conventional mass of the bus will conventionally break your conventional bones.
The conventional truth is highly functional. It's how the universe operates on a daily basis.
Exactly. Now, the second truth is the ultimate truth. This is emptiness. It is the realization that despite their conventional functionality, none of these phenomena, not the mug, not the face, not the bus, possess a shred of inherent, independent essence.
And the profound realization of Madhyamaka is that these two truths are completely inseparable. They are a union.
Let's articulate why this union is so vital. If you only have the ultimate truth, if you only see emptiness, without conventional function, you become paralyzed by nihilism. You can't operate in the world.
But if you only have the conventional truth, if you only see solid objects and independent egos, you become trapped in eternalism, attachment, and suffering.
The genius of Nāgārjuna is showing how one truth actively requires and enables the other. It's counterintuitive, but let's test it.
Okay.
If things were not empty, if they had Svabhāva, a permanent, unchanging essence, they could not interact. The clay could never be molded into a pot because the essence of clay would be fixed and immutable. The pixels couldn't change color to show a different picture.
The software of the universe would crash.
Exactly.
Think about a computer. The conventional truth is the software interface. You click a folder on your desktop and drag it to the trash can. It's a highly functional visual system.
Very intuitive.
But the ultimate truth is that there is no folder, and there is no trash can inside your laptop. There are only microscopic voltage changes happening on a silicon wafer. If you tried to find the inherent essence of the folder inside the motherboard, you would fail. It is empty of folderness.
And this is the key. It is exactly because the hardware is empty of any permanent fixed image, because the silicon can constantly flip between ones and zeros, that the software is able to run.
Emptiness is the prerequisite for functionality.
Yes, emptiness is what allows the conventional world to breathe, to move, to dependently arise. The union of these two truths regarding the three spheres is the very meaning of the union of opposites.
Form is emptiness, emptiness is form.
Exactly.
I feel like we are getting to a place where the logic is sound, but it's really hard to visualize. If the world works precisely because it lacks a solid core, how should we actually view the phenomena around us? That brings us to step 6.
Because these spheres of self, other, and boundary are dependently co-arisen and empty, Madhyamaka literature describes them as deeply illusory.
Illusory, but not hallucinations, right? There's a difference.
A critical difference. A hallucination is seeing something that has no basis in the interdependent network of reality, like seeing a pink elephant in your living room due to a chemical imbalance.
Right.
An illusion, in the Madhyamaka sense, is a real functioning phenomenon that simply is not what it appears to be to the untrained eye. The classical metaphors are incredibly precise. They function like reflections in a mirror, like dreams, like echoes, or like mirages. They're functionally there, yet not there.
Let's unpack the echo metaphor, because I think it perfectly bridges the gap between conventional function and ultimate emptiness.
Go ahead.
If you stand in a canyon and shout, an echo comes back to you. The echo is a real conventional phenomenon. You can record it on a microphone. It vibrates your eardrums. It has a measurable decibel level. It is functionally there.
But does the echo have an inherent independent essence? Does an echo particle exist from its own side?
No. The echo is entirely dependent on a massive web of conditions. It requires the density of the air, the physical shape of the canyon walls, the initial vocal cord vibration, the temperature.
Change any one of those and the echo changes.
Exactly. If you change any one of those conditions, the echo changes or disappears. It is there conventionally, but ultimately not there as an independent entity.
A mirage operates on the exact same mechanics. A mirage of water on a hot asphalt road is visible to your eye. It will even show up on a camera lens.
It's an optical reality.
Right. Produced by a heat inversion layer refracting light. It is a dependently arisen phenomena. But if you run toward it with a cup, trying to quench your thirst, you will get a mouthful of dry dirt.
Because it appears to have the essence of water, but it is empty of it.
And what Nāgārjuna is saying is that our concepts of self, of other, of existence, of opposition, our egos, our fears, our very reality, are exactly like that mirage.
They appear incredibly solid and distinct.
They are highly functional. But when you approach them with analytical reasoning, when you bring the cup to drink, the solidity vanishes.
Which is terrifying and liberating at the same time. And this leads to step 7, a moment where Nāgārjuna scales the analysis up to its absolute maximum scope.
The generalized tetralemma.
Right. He takes the four-cornered logic and applies it not just to self and other, but to literally every conceptual framework the human mind can generate.
So instead of just testing Svabhāva, we plug any concept into the variable this.
He affirms that these three spheres, and indeed all phenomena, are not this. They're not non-this, they are not both, and they are not neither.
And there's absolutely no fifth possibility.
Right.
For whatever this happens to be.
Meaning I can plug any grand philosophical or scientific concept into this. Time, gravity, consciousness, the universe, God, the self, justice.
Any concept at all?
None of them inherently are this. None of them are inherently not this, both or neither.
Because their true nature completely transcends all conditioned dualistic conceptual proliferation. Reality operates entirely beyond the rigid boundaries of our linguistic models, our dyads, and our triads.
Language requires boundaries. Reality has none.
Reality, as it actually is, cannot be captured by the net of human language or concept.
Okay, I'm going to stop you right there, because we have hit a massive wall of cognitive dissonance, and I know anyone listening closely is feeling it too.
Let's hear it.
We are sitting here right now recording a deep dive, speaking the English language, using a highly structured 11-step conceptual triad model.
Guilty as charged.
Utilizing a four-cornered logical engine called the tetralemma to argue that all concepts and linguistic models fail to capture reality.
Yeah.
We are using logic to destroy logic. We are using words to say words are empty. How does a practitioner or anyone hold this cognitive dissonance? It feels like we are trying to bite our own teeth.
It is a phenomenal challenge, and you have put your finger on the exact crux of the Madhyamaka method.
So how does Nāgārjuna deal with it?
He is highly hyper-aware of this paradox. He addresses it directly. The key is to understand that Nāgārjuna's logic is not meant to be a new belief system to hold on to. He isn't building a new house for your mind to live in.
Then what is it?
His logic is a medicine. It is a tool.
Like the classic Zen analogy of the finger pointing at the moon. You need the finger to show you where to look, but if you stare at the finger, you miss the moon.
Or the analogies of the ladder. You use the ladder of logic, the tetralemma, the intense analytical reasoning, to climb up out of the basement of eternalism and annihilationism.
Right.
You climb up to the roof, which is the realization of emptiness. But once you reach the roof, you don't pick up the ladder and carry it around on your back. It's served its purpose. You kick it away.
Oh, I love that. It's like taking an antibiotic to cure an infection. You ingest the medicine to kill the bacteria, but eventually your body flushes the medicine out too. You don't want the antibiotic in your bloodstream forever.
Yes. The logic of the tetralemma is the antibiotic for the disease of clinging to essence.
So it's supposed to destroy itself in the end.
Exactly. The four-cornered logic exhausts the conceptual mind. It blocks every single intellectual exit. It forces the analytical mind into a corner where it realizes its own total limitation.
It shows the mind, undeniably, that no concept can capture the fluid truth of reality.
And in that moment of complete conceptual exhaustion, when the mind finally stops trying to grasp the ungraspable, it has no choice but to let go.
The cognitive dissonance resolves not in a new theory, but in a profound release.
You drop the concepts and rest in a direct, non-conceptual realization of reality as it is.
Wow. Okay, so we've climbed the ladder, we've exhausted the intellect, we've kicked the ladder away, we are standing on the roof holding no concepts, no absolutes.
Yeah.
Which brings us to step 9. What do we actually do now? How do we navigate a Tuesday afternoon in a world of mirages?
Having exhausted all conceptual possibilities, having realized that neither existence nor non-existence holds ultimate truth, the only appropriate attitude toward life, toward yourself, toward the world is the middle way.
But let's clarify this immediately, because middle way sounds like a compromise. It sounds like taking a little bit of column A and a little bit of column B.
It is absolutely not a 50-50 split. The middle way is not a compromise between eternalism and annihilationism. It is a path that must remain entirely free from all extremes.
It doesn't sit on the spectrum between objectivism and nihilism. It steps off the spectrum entirely.
Yes. It's also free from the both extreme, which would be dualism or pluralism, and the neither extreme, which would be monism or radical oneness.
It's not saying everything is one giant, undifferentiated blob either.
Exactly. It completely sidesteps the entire axis of those arguments because the axis itself is built on the false premise of essence.
So practically speaking, and this is step 10, how do you live? If everything is a dependently originated mirage, do you just sit on a cushion in a cave and let your life fall apart?
Because if it's all an illusion, why pay your mortgage?
Exactly. Why get angry at injustice? Why help someone who is suffering?
That reaction is the trap of nihilism, which the middle way explicitly and forcefully rejects. You live in a world of mirages by using these dualities conventionally and relatively. They are highly functional tools.
To go back to the software analogy, you still drag the folder to the trash can. You know it's just voltage on silicon. But if you want to clear your hard drive, you have to play by the rules of the interface.
Yes. Or think about using the concept of a door to walk out of a room. If a building is on fire, you do not sit there analyzing the ultimate emptiness of the door, the fire, and your own body.
Right.
You use the conventional reality of the door to escape the conventional reality of the fire to save your conventional body.
They are tools to navigate the world. The crucial difference is that the practitioner of the middle way uses these tools while intimately knowing they are tools. They never reify them in absolute terms.
You use the door, but you don't worship the door as having an absolute independent essence. You help the person suffering, because suffering conventionally exists and compassion conventionally functions, even if ultimately neither you, the person, nor the suffering possess Svabhava.
You participate in the world fully, but without the heavy anchor of attachment or reification.
Exactly.
I think the best modern metaphor for this is playing a highly immersive, incredibly difficult video game, maybe a full-dive VR game.
Okay, I like where this is going.
When you are in the game, you are fully engaged. If a digital dragon attacks you, your heart rate spikes, you sweat, you dodge, you swing your digital sword. You take the game seriously enough to play it skillfully.
Sure.
But part of your mind always knows you are standing in your living room wearing a headset. You don't try to permanently conquer the digital dragon and bring its head back to your physical kitchen. You don't suffer genuine existential grief when your avatar takes damage.
You play the game, use the mechanics, but you don't mistake the pixels for absolute reality. That is a phenomenal way to describe what Madhyamaka calls acting without acting. The external action, dodging the dragon, paying the mortgage, helping the neighbor, doesn't necessarily change. But the internal landscape is entirely different.
The attachment is gone.
You act without the ego-driven effort of, I, the inherently existent hero, am conquering this inherently existent obstacle. The action happens beautifully and skillfully, but the heavy conceptual baggage of the actor and the acted upon is dropped.
It sounds like a state of profound, almost dizzying lightness. Which brings us to step 11, the culmination of this entire 11-step analytical journey.
We've deconstructed the triad, we've walked the middle way, and we arrive at the final perception.
Primordial purity and suchness.
The Sanskrit term is tathata. Freed from the tyrannical grip of dualistic concepts like Svabhava and parabhāva, freed from the constant exhausting anxiety of trying to secure an inherently existent self in a universe of constant change, your perception shifts dramatically.
Because you are no longer filtering raw reality through the anxious machinery of your ego.
Exactly. When you stop projecting essence onto the world, when you stop violently dividing reality into me and not me, what is left? What remains is reality itself, primordially equal, pure, perfect, complete, and divine, just as it is.
Because it is no longer fragmented by our mental boundaries, the whole canvas is just the canvas.
But I must make one final crucial distinction here, to prevent us from falling into the neither extreme of radical monism we talked about. This oneness we are talking about is strictly non-dual. It is not many, it is not one, it is not both, and it is not neither.
Right. It's not a giant homogeneous soup where everything melts together.
No. The coffee mug is still a coffee mug conventionally, the sky is still the sky, the tree is still a tree. But ultimately, they share the exact same taste of emptiness. Their fundamental nature is identical because they all equally lack inherent essence.
They are equally empty of independence.
Yes. And this realization allows you to simply abide in reality exactly as it presents itself, without adding your conceptual baggage to it and without subtracting anything from it. This state of non-conceptual direct abiding is known as suchness or tathata.
It's just the thusness of things. A bird singing is just a bird singing. The sound of traffic is just the sound of traffic. The feeling of grief is just the feeling of grief.
You don't layer an entire narrative of eternal existence, victimization, or inherent essence over the raw data of reality. You just rest in the suchness.
And in that resting, there is absolute freedom. The immense suffering generated by clinging to an impossible essence simply evaporates because the illusion casting the shadow has been seen through.
It is a profound release.
What a monumental brain-bending journey we just took. Let's do a final synthesis to lock in everything we've covered from Chapter 15.
Sounds good.
The core conclusion we have arrived at through Nāgārjuna's analysis is absolute. There is no real Svabhāva, no self-existence. There is no real opposition or conceptual boundary. There is no real parabhāva, no other existence.
And because that foundational triad collapses, the secondary triad collapses right along with it. There is no real existence. There is no real non-existence. Not both, not neither.
Reality is entirely, completely free from those four extreme conceptual views.
Yes.
The structural map of how we intuitively thought the world worked has been shown to be a useful fiction, a mirage, a VR headset.
But realizing this doesn't destroy the world, it illuminates it. It reveals a breathtakingly complex universe of dependently co-arisen phenomena that we can engage with lightly, compassionately, and skillfully, walking the middle way, resting in the suchness of the present moment.
But before we let you go, we want to leave you with a final provocative thought. Something for you to mull over that builds on this incredible philosophical architecture.
A parting gift for the mind.
Exactly.
Consider this. If Nāgārjuna's reasoning systematically proved that all concepts, all theories, and all tools are empty of inherent existence, then the very philosophy of Madhyamaka, the concept of emptiness itself, is also dependently originated and empty.
Right. Emptiness isn't the new rock bottom.
No. Emptiness is not a new, absolute essence hiding beneath the floorboards. Emptiness itself is empty. It is just another concept, a medicine to cure a disease. Therefore, ultimate freedom is absolute freedom, even freedom from emptiness.
Wow.
So as you go about your conventional day tomorrow, as you drink from your conventional coffee mug and navigate your conventional life, ask yourself, if the emptiness of reality is also empty, what is actually looking out through your eyes right now?
If you aren't the solid, eternal core you always thought you were, what are you? It is a beautiful, terrifying, liberating question. Thank you for joining us on this profoundly transformative deep dive. We hope you can take these insights, drop the heavy baggage of essence, and just rest in that space of suchness for a while. We started today talking about our obsession with finding the bottom of things, the ultimate pit of reality, but perhaps the greatest realization is that the beauty, the heartbreak, and the breathtaking wonder of the universe was never hidden in some solid, eternal core. It is in the interdependent, empty, perfectly fluid dance of reality itself. Until next time.